Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. How can a simple person connect to the wisdom of the universe? How does it take to become enlightened? How can we balance life in the material and spiritual worlds? Any of these questions, your questions? Have you ever thought of these questions? Well, today we're going to be talking about connecting and becoming enlightened. This is a fascinating topic, and I think one of the first that we have to address in order to understand what we're all made out of, what our purpose is, and what the possibilities of life can be here on this planet and beyond. So, what is making room for the light? What does it mean to connect? And what does it take to become truly enlightened? These aren't abstract or spiritual riddles. They're deeply personal questions that each of us must face at some time and point of our lives. In this episode, we begin with the idea that our true connection begins from within. Before we can shine outward, we must make room for the light to enter us, clearing away the noise, distractions, and inherited expectations that clutter the inner space where truth and presence reside. The struggle between the secular and the spiritual, we explore the modern-day tension between institutional systems and deeply yearning for personal spiritual experience. Enlightenment does not come from conformity or performance. It arrives when we begin to perceive the divine within and live from that center. In contrast with a religion based on authority, the religion of personal spiritual experience reveals a transformative path where faith becomes a living relationship with truth, not a rigid structure. To connect is to awaken, and to awaken is to embody spiritual reality as part of our daily lives. This episode invites you to consider, what can you do to let go to make room for the light? What inner space needs clearing, and what part of you is ready, shining, but simply forgotten? Together we'll reflect, share, and ignite that divine spark that's always been within us, waiting patiently for us to notice. So remember, if you like this podcast, remember to subscribe, like, and share. We do appreciate you sharing, making this community bigger. And also remember to visit the tools we've developed. They're free tools like the UB Tutor, the UB Podcast, and Discover Jesus. You can find the information below, and you can use this freely whenever you can. So now let me introduce my panel. I really like this one because we have a variety of brothers that have been through this path, some longer, some shorter, but I feel that they have the same qualities. They have truth-seeking and truth-giving in all of them. First of all, I want to introduce April Helen. She is a lifelong teacher, healer, and creative visionary with over 30 years of experience as an art of living consultant. She considers herself a service collaborator, walking alongside individuals and organizations as we progress toward greater connection, purpose, and embodied presence through transformational courses, practices, and soul-rooted wisdom. April Helen is the co-founder and executive director of two nonprofits devoted to the individual and social transformation, cultivating a global culture of service. Welcome, April Helen.
Well, good cheer, everyone. Aloha. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Now we go with Don Clementin. Donald, who goes by Don, was born and raised in the Bay Area of Northern California. He worked in the engineering field as a structural draftsman until he retired, repurposing in 2020. Don has lived in Boston, Massachusetts since 1999, where he resides with his wife and supportive Urantia Book partner. In 2012, he met his authors behind what would become the Christ Experiment, and he has since become a dedicated partner in that effort. Don continues to actively promote and advance the teachings of the Urantia Book. Welcome, Don. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Happy to be with you.
Thank you. And now I move to another brother of mine, James. James has a long history and has been working as a musician and carpenter most of his life. And along with other pursuits, he has a stern sense of attraction to God and spiritual realities guided him into religion and philosophy as a teen. He read the Bible, explored metaphysics and the occult, checked out Eastern spiritual paths, and supplemented his spiritual exploration with psychedelic mind medicines, LSD, peyote, and psilocybin. Like others who came of the age of the 1960s, James became a hippie and a traveling minstrel. His rigorous research for more Jesus led him to the Urantia Book in 1973. The formidable text was exactly what he was looking for, and he read it cover to cover. Following a 1974 visit to the Urantia Foundation's headquarters in Chicago, James was certain that the revelation was what it claimed to be. Later, James became active in the Urantia community, hosting study groups, organizing conferences, and contributing his photojournalism skills to the Urantia Foundation and the Urantia Association. His volunteer work has a prelude to joining the staff of the Urantia Foundation in the year 2000, where he managed the Reader Services Department and traveled extensively as a Urantia Book ambassador. In 2005, James became the executive administrator of the Urantia Association, and following the tenure, has continued to serve in leadership roles. Recently, James has released his second album of original songs as J. Woody, many with spirit themes, and he edits Urantia-based secondary works and is currently writing a book detailing his spiritual adventures. It's a pleasure to have you, James. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for that kind introduction, Santiago. Nice to be here with my friends and my other esteemed adventures on the spiritual path.
Well, it's a pleasure having you, Don. James, Don, and April, Helen. And now I'm going to introduce Ian. Ian is a mechanical engineer, inventor, tinkerer, and gearhead who likes to fix things, solve problems, and simply the complex. And speaking of the complex, he's going to be working the Ghost in the Machine. We have an AI, the UB tutor, that it sort of helps us in our spiritual quest. We can ask it questions, and he's going to be operating that throughout the course of this session. And we're going to be learning what the Ghost in the Machine wants to tell us. So thanks and welcome, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks. So to start this off, and whomever wants to start it off, just raise your hand or start talking. But I'm curious, what's the first thing you have to do when you connect and become enlightened? What's the first thing that comes to your mind that you have to do?
Go, April.
Go, April.
April Helen, it's one word.
April
Thanks for the
Helen.
opportunity to give a little spin on this question after nearly 30 years of an experience of helping people, sharing my insight, and collaborating with others in the art of living. I've observed something beautifully consistent that no matter what and where, this question is very popular. And the most powerful truth that I've found is that you don't have to reach for connection. You're already connected. So the first step is acknowledging that. Enlightenment isn't something that we get. It's something that we remember. It's not somewhere we go. It's what we return to when we remember and pause and breathe and invite observation. That alone can change everything. Simply sitting with that observation and witnessing and acknowledging. And so much of the struggle, it seems, in this striving to connect, yet we acknowledge the presence that's already within us. We stop chasing and start allowing, and to find the door that has already been open this whole time. So that is my initial take on that question.
Well, thanks for sharing, and I get the point what you're saying. It's really observing, and as you say, once you acknowledge, everything starts to kind of fall into place. You realize and you accept. That's how I understand it?
Yes, and what comes in that, and I love Mr. James, you speak to the adventure. It's always this creative unfolding. And as you acknowledge, then that opens up this reality to have the practices that support this connection to be maintained. which I think we're going to be getting into that in the
Of
next.
course. Yeah, of course. One thing is to know it, and now to practice it. How do we execute that? And please fill in us on your information, James.
Well, I would go along with everything Helen just said. It's all true. There's a lot of misinformation about enlightenment, and it's completely true that it is within us. However, we do have to think about it. We have to meditate about it. We have to have an interest in discovering the divine within. We know it's there. Helen just reminded us it's there. And we know this whole program is about the divine within. So how do you make room for the light is you clear out some of the darkness. Now, that might sound like, ooh, that's not all spiritual, but it's true. We've all got junk floating around in there, and mainly because we come from a secular materialist world. The world is it's a mess out there. So you make room for the light through the practices. Now, this is where we get into the practice too. Is that the silence? You have to make, in order to find the light, you have to make room for it, and you have to do that through the silence. And there are a lot of practices that we can use. Prayer, meditation, and worship are the classic ones, and they will connect you with that divine within if you're sincerely motivated.
And I think that's very important. The what you're saying on remaining silent and hearing, right?
Well, it's not just a theory. The divine is interested in you and what you're doing, and making that a stronger connection. But you do have to clean the slate, so to speak, and you do that. All of the traditions throughout history have recommended meditation, the silence, prayer, and especially worship. Worship is a whole different thing. I think we'll probably get into that as we go along here. I hope we do, because there is a distinction between meditation, prayer, and worship. The way that light works is when it shines on a shadow, the shadow is dissipated. So we all have shadows. We carry around our shadows as a result of this crazy world we live in, secular materialist culture, and our upbringing. A lot of things go into it. So getting rid of the shadow is really just a matter of shining the light. You go outside, the sun shines, and you brighten up. It's a nice experience. It's much the same with the divine. The divine is that light, and when you invite it to be present with you and in you and around you, it just sort of dissipates the shadows. At least that's the way I kind of look at it. And of course, the practices that favor the light coming in are going into the silence in whatever manner you might do that through meditation, prayer, and worship, are the typical, the ideals that have been with us for millenniums, and they work. They work if you have if you're motivated sincerely, and ask and you shall receive. That's almost become cliche, but in my experience, it works. I had to find a practice of my own. It was some decades ago, but I thought I had the Urantia book kind of figured out, and this God thing, but I needed to practice. I didn't have a daily ritual where I went into the silence and tried to commune with the divine, and that made a huge difference. It made all the difference in my life. So I recommend that for anybody that wants to get more of that divine. Set aside some time, let the light in.
I really like this, and this has been a common thread not only in this conversation, but all the conversations that we had with the different people. It's number one, you have to be willing. Number two, you have to make light. I mean, make room for the light. It's first of all, will it, then welcome it in a way. Can you help? Can you confirm, or can you share something on this, Don? I know that you have a nice view on this.
Yes. For me, the idea of getting enlightenment doesn't come in a vacuum. If you're very satisfied with life and where you are, sometimes there's nothing that compels you to want to move to a higher level. There has to be a level of dissatisfaction with where you are, and also a desire to move to a higher level of truth. And this is not always easy. At least for me, I grew up in a religion where all the answers were given for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you grow up in that environment, you believe you have all the answers. But I think within all of us, we all at some point, no matter where we are or what we believe, have a nagging question in the back of the mind that says, this isn't quite right. And it takes a level of courage to be able to say, I'm going to investigate it, because the powers that be don't want you to do that. Not only the powers that be don't want you to do it, sometimes we ourselves don't want to go there. We don't want to pull on that thread, because the whole sweater may become unraveled. And then what do I do? So there's a certain amount of fear that can enter the whole realm of wanting to become enlightened. And you've all heard the saying, be careful what you ask for, because what you ask for, you may get it. And it may be true and profound, and it could whack you right to the ground. I remember a book I had come across years ago. It was called The Myth of Certainty. And in that book, it described how Christians have this tension that exists between what they've grown up believing, and when they began to think critically about things, a tension begins to occur. Where do I go? How do I deal with this? Who can I even talk to about this? So the first thing that we have to do if we want to connect with enlightenment, there's got to be a courageous desire that supersedes whatever may come about. In other words, as they say, following truth wherever it may lead you. And if we can develop the courage to do that, and we can engage in prayer for help, we may be able to find a friend who can help us along, but we have to embark on it. For me, there was a lot of collateral damage, because in my quest, I was ultimately excommunicated from the religion that I had grown up with. And it wasn't
Okay.
over anything bad, like committing some kind of crime, but it was simply deviating from the way that we are taught to do certain things. But the aftermath of it is you feel so liberated and you feel so free. And then you begin to move from one level of enlightenment to another level and another level. And it's such a beautiful, satisfying experience that begins to be reflected in all aspects of your life. But you have to be willing
Yeah.
to travel that path.
There, no, and I can relate to that, and totally, and something. I mean, what you just describing happened to me, and I wasn't excommunicated, but but yeah, I mean, one of the things that, as I grew, and some of the what you're saying, some of the facts or some of the, and they even call them mysteries, were really something that really weren't kind of barrier to really understanding God, and to my conclusion is, I cannot, make sense of God if I cannot make sense of what they're saying. I cannot understand. And suddenly, I let go. But it was frightening, because you do have to break with the paradigms, with what you've been, taught of throughout your life. And one of the things that Sandra Reinberg tells us, and she says, I was free from fear. I had to be free from fear, because it's fearful. And suddenly, when you start going away from the, the shores that from the comfort of what it is a struggle. It is discovering, and the rewards are great. They are, but nonetheless, the struggle is scary. Like you're saying, everything, all the things that you guys were saying, you have to go and face fear. You have to have that nagging question, that it's not comfortable. It's that shoe, that rock in that shoe that it just doesn't feel good, that you suddenly look at it and find the rock and take it out, in a way, if you want to use an image on that. Ian, do you have anything on the tutor?
Yeah, I've been asking the tutor questions as people were talking, but to be honest, what was said by the humans is better. There are some nuggets in the tutor that I'll pull out.
Yay, humans!
One of them, the foundation.
Yay!
Isn't that funny how that works? I mean, the tutor is amazing, but
True.
Personal experience and things like that, it's hard to beat that. The pursuit of truth, it says, is foundational, and it reminds me of a wise man who said many times, you should always, I'm paraphrasing, you should always strive for the highest truth, even if it's uncomfortable, and you should speak the truth. When you see something that's false, you should call it out as false. And it may not be the most comfortable thing, and it may be painful at the time, but it will be the best possible outcome that you can possibly have, is to speak the truth, not to ignore it, not to stay silent. And that, I think that's good advice. It's worked for me. I can read about what the bot says about truth.
Yeah, if you could share just a little bit of what they said, it'd be great.
Sure. The desire for truth is absolutely foundational in the pursuit of enlightenment. It is a driving force that propels the soul toward greater understanding, deeper connection with the divine, and the realization of spiritual realities. Without the sincere yearning for truth, the journey toward enlightenment falters. As a desire for truth that opens the mind and heart to higher knowledge and the transformative power of divine guidance. If there's things that we are ignoring that we know we shouldn't, it's hard to move on, I guess.
Yeah.
Truth is not merely an intellectual concept. It's a living reality that encompasses the essence of the divine, the purpose of existence, and the principles that govern the universe. Pursuit of truth requires humility, courage, and openness to growth, as it often challenges preconceived notions and compels you to transcend the limitations of ego self-interest. The desire for truth is what awakens the soul to its spiritual potential and aligns it with the eternal quest for meaning and purpose. The other thing that the bot pointed out was it takes an act of faith to kick it off. And I think that could be a lot of things, but I thought that was a pretty good statement.
Oh, pretty nice. And yeah, I think our comments are pretty aligned in what the tutor is saying. And yeah, it's taking the bull by the horns and committing to it. And I think it's an everyday commitment. It's not just, okay, I'm going to be enlightened. No. That's just the beginning of the quest. The actual quest is before you. Well, thanks a lot for that, Ian. Thanks a lot for that, those comments, guys. I mean, and we kind of talked about it. We have to make room, but how do you make room for the light? How, James, you said that there's practices, there's techniques, but how do you make room for the light? It's and I see it in a way of, in order for muscles to grow, first you have to burn fat away. That's the first thing. It'd be great if we would just, pour muscle, but first you have to burn off the fat, then the muscle comes in. So I kind of like that imagery. But how do we make room for the light?
Hallelujah.
Yay.
It's been a wonderful, I love hearing variety of perspectives. Thank you so much. So, yes, very closely related to that last question. And again, this comes up so much with my clients and circle sharing across the globe. And I am familiar with consistent comments like, I used to feel so clear and aligned, and now something's in the way. And I immediately go to the body. How is your body temple? How is your sleep? What are you feeding your body? What are you feeding your spirit? Where are you holding stress that even though you don't realize you're holding? Who are the 10 people you spend the most time with, and observe how they're influencing you, positive or less positive than you're thriving. And here's the thing, it's very similar to the first. You don't have to make light happen. The light is already here. The light is filled in the universe, filling and filled. And sometimes we have filled our lives and bodies so full with overthinking and overdoing, overgoing, and there's no space left for the light to continue to permeate. And the way we make room for it, declutter physically, emotionally, energetically. So nourishing our bodies, checking in, observing them, really be embodying the values that you say you have, and nourishing our bodies with rest and movement, foods, getting radically honest about what we're carrying and forgiving what we've been resisting, softening what we've been bracing against. And when we tend to ourselves like a garden or a temple, we naturally begin to glow, and the light returns. Even though it's already there, we're more available to reflect it. And not because we've summoned it, but because we're letting it in. So if you're listening out there and wondering how to feel that light again, observe and care for your vessel. You're an evolving soul living in a material body. And returning to your body is an important adventure along the way. Thanks for letting me share. And watch how that natural light just beams from inside of you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing on that. And I think it's what you pointed out. It's you can't how can you eat more when you're already stuffed with food, and what kind of food are you feeding yourself? So that's the first question that you have to ask yourself, and and I say this anecdote a lot of times. Once I was in Texas, driving, I think it was near Waco. No, this was near Fort Worth, and I was listening to the radio, and they had an interview. They were interviewing a guy that had been a prisoner from the Taliban, and the interviewer was asking them, so you were there, and you knew these people, and they knew they were doing evil. It's like they knew they were in favor of evil. And what he said really shocked me. He said, "You'd be amazed at how the capacity of the human mind to justify anything it does." So that really stuck to me, and it's really that they're not seeing that as evil, they're seeing it in a way that they're doing God's will. And how can you deceive yourself? How powerful is the mind that you can even deceive yourself with that? So, I mean, I'm taking it to the extreme, but I think you do have to realize, everybody has to realize what we're thinking, what we're doing, and your thoughts become your habits, your actions, and it's a sequence, and it depends on how we're going to do it. If it's full of virtue, or it's full of decadence in that sense. But the first thing that you have to do is stop kidding yourself, because you can be an 80, 90-year-old fool, because you kid yourself all the time. And you can be a 10-year-old wise person because you stopped kidding yourself. I don't know. What's your opinion, James? How do you see this?
Well, I really did appreciate the emphasis April Helen brought in about your personal care. I mean, the body and the temple. Um, of course, that's a female kind of perspective more than it ought to be everybody's. But we know, that you ladies, you bring that more, and I for one really appreciate it. And of course, it goes more too. The spiritual aspect, I especially related to what you were saying there about, and I'll just say this, is that the true test of how enlightened you are is how you are lighting those around you. Is that if you're enlightened, that literally means that you should be shining some light out, not just sitting on your mountaintop, blissing out. Nothing wrong with that, but uh, we're really supposed to be out in the world, doing loving service, giving back, and trying to express. The In the Urantia book, it talks about the what I would paraphrase and call the divine fingerprints of God. Is that whenever you're close to deity, you're going to see truth, beauty, and goodness, and love, of course, which is sort of the consummation of all three of those triads. We see that repeated over and over. So, and you guys been talking about the truth. You were talking about it, Santiago. No more fooling yourself. So that is an important thing. Is that get onto the truth, look for the beauty. Those things are very useful.
Definitely. Well, thanks for sharing, James. Don, you want to comment?
Yes. The other thing April Helen said was the light is already around us. The light exists. Okay. You don't really have to search. It's already there. And the way we make room for it will depend on our capacity. But you could even pull the shade up just a little bit and let some in. You don't have to flood yourself with all the truth that could ever be known. For some of us, it has to be progressive, but let the shade up a little bit if that's where you are, and don't silence the questions. I think one of the most beautiful experiences about how people can do this at various levels is I remember there was an occasion where one of the apostles went to Jesus, noticed something about the way he was teaching, and says, I noticed this about this. You don't say certain things that we're accustomed to hearing. And Jesus said, Thomas, you're right. And he says, I will answer your question under the condition that you do not relate this to your brothers because they're not ready for it. And what he ended up telling his disciple blew his mind. And so much so that it says when he did relate some of it, he had to really tamp it down because he didn't want them to go into some kind of mental turbulence. But the fact is, this disciple, his ear was attuned. And he could have just said, well, that's just the way the master teaches. I'll just accept it at face value, the way the rest of the disciples did. But the master fully satisfied his question. And it must have just really settled his soul internally. Now, maybe the other disciples got it later, but because this one opened the shade a little bit, let a little light in, he opened it more and more, he got it. And so I would say the way we make room for the light is to do the same thing. So if we have something nagging at us or something that requires that we want to have answered and we're not satisfied, let's do a little work. Maybe we need to do some research on the topic. Maybe we need to talk with someone. And I like the other thing that was mentioned about humility. A lot of wisdom comes from places that we least expect. There's a passage I read
true.
about prophets sometime appear in unorthodox raiment. So it could be just a guy who you would dismiss because of the way he looks, but you sit down and have a conversation with him and a light bulb can go off. Humility will allow you to open your mind to diverse views from others who are outside of your tribe. So be open. Just walk around with a sense of openness and the ability to be receptive and keep your ear attuned.
Oh, that's really beautiful, Don. And yeah, it's humility, and I like what you're saying. You know that we always accept things at face value. Well, I mean, when you're a kid, that's what you do. I mean, life is you have to accept at face value. Now, you're the difference between us and the rest of the animals here is that an animal, a couple of hours after it's born, it can move into its own apartment. It can settle down and doesn't need its parents. For us, I mean, I think I still need my parents, and I'm 45. You still need that comforting there. But in our case, as human beings, we, the culture, the mores, everything that we learn comes from the prior generation. The previous generation. So whatever that we're putting into that is really what is really moving it forward. So I understand that sometimes, I mean, we start from these fear-based or with this, anxiety or, accepting things at face value. I remember one of the first things I had to accept, when I was very young, it's okay. So there is a God, but we have there's three people within God. Okay. I'll say, okay, so there's three gods. No. There's one God, but there's three people. Shoot, I don't get it. Well, you're not supposed to get it. That's why it's called a mystery. Oh, okay. So they say mystery.
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, they're the things that didn't make sense to me. And it's funny because I think a lot of people happened the same, and I went to a nun school, well, a Catholic school. And that my teacher used to be a nun, and she was telling us about, the theory of evolution. And she said, well, so she had to do it because that was in the course, that was, you had to teach that. But she said in the end, well, but if that was true, then we wouldn't have apes, and everybody said, oh yeah, that's right, we wouldn't have apes, so we wouldn't have monkeys. And I raised my hand, and she looks, and oh shoot, Santiago again, what's he gonna ask now? Well, wouldn't it be just the case that it was one type of ape that kind of evolved, kind of took its path? And he just looked at me. He's like, "You just won't quit, won't you?" I said, "Well, I have a question. You don't have the answer. It's a very simple question, If okay, you don't have the answer, that's fine. I'll leave it at that, But it is fun, And eventually, I got to a point when I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and I had a reflection, and every time, and this is not criticizing, on the contrary, I taking a lot of my original religion or my foundational religion that I grew up with, but now I have my own personal religion or my personal relationship with God. But I remember the last times, and I do sometimes go to services, and I understand it now. But I got to a point when I was around 19 years old that I was there at Mass, and I saw people in communion, and I realized, and I said, a lot of them are not really seeking God. They're really just getting away from the devil, because if you go to church once a week and you get that committed and you kind of just check it out of your box, then you're not going to hell. And I said, that's not my point. I know I'm not going to hell. I don't even know if it exists, but I want to get closer to God. And that, started my quest. And, and it was a very subtle and very, I think I'm not going to be able to find anything here anymore. And life, took me somewhere else and brought me 180 degrees different path, rediscovered Jesus in a different way, completely understand afterwards. And now we're here talking about the divine within, one thing led to the other, and this is part of my path. So Ian, do you have anything to contribute? Well, go ahead, James. What you were going to say?
I had to follow up. You were that kid, right? You were that kid in school with all the preguntas.
I
all
think
the
we were all that kid.
all the questions. Yeah, I think I was had some of that going on too. And I wanted to touch back with something that Don said that really struck me too about the receptivity and all that. There are two papers in the Urantia book that are devoted to this fellow, this philosopher from Alexandria, that the world really doesn't know about, and there's some incredible. Well, there's some incredible wisdom in those two papers. Uh, how he interpreted the master's teachings and the struggles that he had with coming to terms with God as a person. But to the main point was something that really struck me, and he said that relaxation determines your capacity for spiritual reception. And it sounds kind of plain, but when you really dig into that, so what's relaxation do? Well, going back to what Helen was talking about with our practices and particularly stress related. I know that yoga, that you've been involved in yoga for many years, and any sort of meditation that reduces the stress and promotes relaxation is going to also promote your search for the divine within. That's just how it works. You kind of have to, and the declutter thing that you mentioned, a little bit of decluttering. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Well,
I'll
thanks.
chime in. Yeah.
Yes, come on.
James. So this question, we could go through a bullet list of practices, and I'll just name a few of mine. Journaling, date for me every single morning in my time with the divine, journaling 3 pages, and that helps to declutter. But it also, as I ask for creative guidance, unexpected things come up and that inform decisions, which thankfully we have free will, or at least that is my interpretation of this reality. So our decisions are so important. And then I'm really getting into this 4-step. So maybe write these down. It's observing tension in the body and seeing where you can release it, and as often in the day as you can do that, as often, moment by moment. So if you're just coming into the practice, I would even put or suggest, this is what helped me, put sticky notes all over the house, and to help remind you anytime you're passing through a doorway or looking at a mirror. And I did that for a year, and how radically my inner dialogue, which is another important aspect to observe. And you mentioned it, Brother Santiago, of your thoughts become your pattern, habits, and action. And so really getting clear, honest, radical honesty of that inner working as it helps to inform your outer engagement in action, service, and then that I'll just repeat that ruthless, I called it radical honesty, yet if you look at it ruthlessly, that even
Whoa.
takes it to a level. and
Whoa.
yeah, and then how that helps our relationships. And as we know, or as we may know, what I'm learning is that it's in relationship that our values are enacted more clearly and more connected. And it's with that ruthless honesty that we look at the integrity that we're living up to the values that we say we have. So there you have it.
Nice.
Mic drop.
Nice. And I like that it's four steps, right? It's 4 concepts or 4 practices. Because we're gonna talk about this later. I have a 4-step practice that kind of goes through that way. You know, first you observe, then you have that dialogues because of what happens out there. Then you have to be honest and kind of put those 2 together and plant it. But that's for another day or for another topic, because we have a lot of unpacking to do still. So Ian, do you want to share something from the tutor? Did you get something?
Sure. I asked it how we balance the spirit and material worlds, and it came up with a good answer, and I'll read it to you now. Balancing the life and the spirit and the material worlds is a dynamic process that requires a deep understanding of their interconnectedness. It's basically saying they're not separate, and I believe that. The material world with its demands and responsibilities is not an obstacle to spiritual growth, but rather the stage upon which spiritual values are tested, refined, and expressed. The spiritual world, in turn, provides a higher purpose and guiding principles that infuse material life with meaning and direction. The key to balance lies in harmonizing these 2 dimensions, recognizing they are not in conflict, but are complementary aspects of the same reality. To achieve this balance, it is essential to view the material world as a means for spiritual expression. Every task, relationship, and challenge in daily life can become an opportunity to demonstrate love, patience, and integrity. By infusing your material actions with spiritual intent, you elevate the ordinary into the extraordinary, transforming even mundane activities into the acts of service and worship. At the same time, cultivating a consistent spiritual practice through prayer, meditation, or quiet reflection anchors your awareness in the divine presence, providing the clarity and strength needed to navigate the complexities of material existence. This balance also requires prioritization, which material pursuits are necessary for survival and well-being. They should not overshadow the deeper purpose of life, which is spiritual growth, alignment, with divine will. By keeping your spiritual values at the forefront of your decisions, you ensure that the material endeavors serve a higher purpose rather than becoming ends in themselves. This alignment creates a sense of harmony, where your material life supports your spiritual aspirations and your spiritual life enriches your material experiences. So, yeah, I find that just asking to participate, like if I have a problem to solve at work, I'll just ask, hey, I'd love it if, Father, if you would join me in solving this problem, finding a creative solution to this problem. And it's amazing how that works. It has for me.
Seek and you shall find. And it is true. It is true. And it's very important. And we're going to read one of the quotes. And I have an essay that explains on this. And the title of this is The Struggle Between the Secular and the Spiritual. So let me read this, and I'm going to open to the floor so you guys can comment. But the quote is, religion is now confronted by the challenge of a new age of scientific minds and materialistic tendencies. In this gigantic struggle between the secular and the spiritual, the religion of Jesus will eventually triumph. And by the religion of Jesus, we're not talking about And Christianity, as we know, you're talking about the essence of the life and teachings of Jesus, just to make that clear, that we're not talking about Christianity as we know it. We're talking about Jesus before Christianity. So this highlights the profound crossroads at which modern society stands, the tension between rapidly advancing scientific knowledge and materialistic worldviews, and the enduring spiritual needs of humanity. As science uncovers the mechanisms of the universe, there's a tendency for some to dismiss the spiritual dimensions as outdated or irrelevant. This new age of scientific minds and materialistic tendencies challenges traditional religious structures, forcing a deeper examination of what authentic faith truly means. It is a reminder that genuine spiritual experience must evolve and demonstrate its living relevance in an age where empirical proof and material progress dominate. However, it offers a powerful assurance that the religion of Jesus, a religion based on not a rigid dogma, but on living faith, love, and personal experience with God, will ultimately prevail. The faith that Jesus taught us is not threatened by science because it's not built on the superstition of fear, but in the inner spiritual reality of a personal relationship with the divine. The spiritual experience cannot be invalidated by material discoveries. Rather, it transcends them. As materialistic systems struggle to meet the deeper longings of the human soul, the simple, profound truth of Jesus' message that each person is beloved child of God will continue to resonate, heal, and inspire. Ultimately, this struggle between the secular and the spiritual will refine and purify human religion. The triumph of Jesus' religion will not only be through force of argument, but through its ability to satisfy the deepest needs of the human heart: love, purpose, hope, and a connection to something eternal. As science explains the material world, true religion will continue to illuminate the meaning behind existence, blending reason with faith and enriching the human experience with wisdom, compassion, and the living presence of God.
Oh, yes. This is, I'm so glad that you added that, Santiago. And I love the essay, the beautiful distinction it makes about Jesus' religion. Has nothing to do with traditional religions, but it's a concept of love and faith. And just to give you an example of how that had really affected me, um, during the religion I grew up with, I'm not going to name it, but you'll know what it is as I describe. But we are very well known at one time for going from door to door, knocking on people's door and presenting a Bible message. I grew up doing this. And in the decades that I did this, it was always with the idea of winning someone over to my religion. And even though we presented the face of, oh, yes, I'm really here to hear your side, it was always with an agenda to convert you. I went there, I had the truth, and you didn't. Okay. Jettison past that, where I left that behind and have now read the life and teachings of Jesus. And I'm now going forth with an idea. This is already a preconceived idea that you are my brother. It doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter what race you are, what culture you are. I advance from the idea, you're my brother already. So we're already on the same track. And the way the master just encountered people, I said, that's how I want to be. That's how I want to do it. Now, in all these decades of my going forth and proselytizing, I was always in arguments with people. And it was like, okay, I got to prove to you that this is the way, as delicately as I could. And it was always a wrangling. Do you know, since embracing the way the master actually did it, I have had no arguments. None. And I talk to many people now. I can sit and listen to your views and your feelings with an open mind and an open heart and simply say, this is where my brother or sister is on their journey. And I also remember when my head was shut up and I wouldn't listen to anyone. So I can now be compassionate with a person who's not open-minded yet, and I don't have to wrangle with them. But if we could get to that level of the way the master encountered people, and you start off with the idea, you're my brother, let's see
Yeah.
how we can build each other up. We could change this world. We really can change the world. And it really does begin with an individual. I often think that, and I encountered this with my own ministry partners. We're constantly thinking, okay, well, let's develop this website so that we can have it, have bling to it and attract people here and there. But my most profound experiences have been just meeting someone. And if you'd like, I'd like to share a little experience with you.
Please, please.
Okay. So last year I was sitting in the public garden, which is in Boston. And one of the things that being religiously free has done is it's opened me up to try things or experiment with things that I've never done before because there was a block on it. I always admired Sherlock Holmes smoking his pipe, or watching J.R.R. Tolkien stoking his pipe while he's, explaining something heavy. So I decided I'm going to get a pipe and experiment with tobacco. Maybe it'll raise my intellectual level. So anyway, a friend of mine, or this guy was walking through the public garden, and he had on a nice little cap and smoking his pipe. And I looked at him, I said, nice pipe you got there. And so he says, oh, you like pipes? I says, yeah, I've been enjoying it. So we got into a discussion of that. He was living in Florida and happened to be on a business trip. And there's a famous tobacconist that's nearby. And I'm not encouraging anyone to smoke or use tobacco, okay? This is just for illustrative purposes, because I highly am in tune with April Helen. You've got to take care of your body. Okay. You don't. Okay. So I'm just dabbling here. So we went over there and we exchanged phone numbers. He's been coming back to Boston occasionally, and every time he comes, we get together for lunch. And I have certain teachings and things that I espouse, but I never advance them unless I hear there's an opening in their conversation for spirituality. Otherwise, they would never know that I have a Christ Experiment website. They'd never know that I have the Urantia book that I've been reading, because I just want to build friendships. That's all. And if it leads somewhere, good. But I'm finished with those days of proselytizing people. So we ended up, he mentioned something about Jesus. He initiated it. And I just started asking him a couple of questions. And he was hungry and he wanted to know, what I thought about this and that. And so I said, well, he's Catholic. I said, are you open to, reading things outside of, your comfort zone? And I said, I have something that I like and you may like it. I said, but I'm very reluctant to give this to you because it could tip you over the edge. And that just made him more hungry for it. So to make a long story short, he begged me for it. He begged me for it. Okay. I gave him a Urantia book and I told him to start with part 4. He got home. He dived into it. He called me. He says, Don, I think God meant for us to meet. Now, let me tell you the upside of this. I have not known him for a full year. I met him last year. In October of the same year I met him, he called me up. He says, Don, I'm going to Ireland on a business trip. I'd like for you to come. If you can get your flight, I will cover all your expenses. I was able to go to Ireland last year to Galway and Dublin. We spent 10 days there. Beautiful experience. and we're still very good friends. The reason I relate this to you is because what I've learned is that Jesus talked to everyone. No one was off limits. And he took it from the standpoint that you're a son of God and you're my friend. I never would have had this experience if I had that chosen people religious attitude or had
Yeah,
certain
yeah.
prejudices that, oh, I can't go out this side of this boundary, or I don't know you. Should I give you my phone number? Or I don't know your background. Are you going to try to gyp me or do something? And so what you're saying just, and that quote you had there just really resonates with me. And I've seen that from life experience. And that's been replicated in many other experiences I've had with people.
And you know, we can't hide the fact that all of us right here are together because of this brotherhood.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot, Don. Anybody else wants to share?
Yeah,
James,
that brought
April.
up something for me around whenever I find myself in spiritual or religious conversations. In the vein of Art of Universal Language, a little plug for one of my programs, that the first step in a conversation like that is it might be a little steps down the line. However, a very important step is getting clear on the definition of each of the individuals in the conversation of religion. And that is always my opportunity to share my perspective of I'm an April Helen. I practice April Hellenism, and the religion of personal experience. In fact, I was just in a workshop yesterday and she went around the room and said, "What's your religious tradition?" And everybody was having these, institutional, traditional religious. I was like, "I'm an April Helen." And, everybody's having whatever's going on in their mind about that. Nobody approached me about it after, yet that is something that to advocate, to inspire a new framing of that word, I think is really important for the evolution of
Certainly,
society, humanity, culture.
certainly,
Yes.
certainly. I think
Well,
what you just said is very important. Rewording that word, taking the negative connotation to the truth. James, go ahead.
Well, right on that. I like to. Well, I've done before we had these AIs. I used to do targeted searches. The search engines for the Urantia book have been around for a long time. So you could, put your question or a word in and get all those references anywhere in the Urantia book. So I developed quite a hobby in doing that. I've made hundreds of these studies, I call them. It's actually the right word is a compendium. So what I discovered was I kept seeing in the Urantia book where it used the phrase true religion. And I went, oh, okay. And it was always like we've been discussing here, it was basically talking about the religion of personal spiritual experience, uh, which is connecting with the divine within, which is connected to the divine without, God in paradise and all of the spiritual ministries, angels all around us all the time. We know that. But anyways, the that this redefining is very important because we know, and we've talked about it in developing some of the philosophy for this podcast, is that religion is a trigger word. This famous thing of, oh, I'm spiritual but not religious. Man, I hear that and I want to go, oh, hey, wait a minute, you can be both. You can be both, if you don't want to talk about that religion of fear, the one that says that every other religion isn't right, or like Don was talking about his experiences. So anyhow, that just tagging on to that, true religion is something that we really, I feel like it's part of what the Urantia book is here to do, is to redefine and update those traditional definitions and others as well.
Certainly, certainly, and that's part of what we're trying to do here. It's, I mean, we're not coming here, and although we do have a source and I mean, our spiritual uh, paths and journeys do have, information and sources, and that's why we have a common language among us. But the most important thing, I believe here, is to redefine. It's, and not take the like you were saying, the fear-based religion, but to a religion of the spirit. And what I find very interesting, if God really, the grandest gift that He could give us is personality, and personality means that we are all unique. Each one of us is unique, not irreplaceable and uncopyable. So if He's giving us that, beautiful gift, why are we trying to conform everybody into one mold? Why do we want to put everything in there? So I'd say it in another way. It's like when you break a window shattering, and you have all these mosaics, and before maybe it was just white light coming in there, and there wasn't all these colors, but now that you break it and it has different angles, different sizes and whatnot, you have this beautiful mosaic that can turn out and be a very beautiful canvas. Just a little small mosaics of everything, which all is part of God. Everything, every piece of that is a fragment of God, actually. And that's what we have inside of us, and that's why the divine within can be within us, because those fragments are in us. And if God made us all different, why are we trying to conform and make us all one, and lose the uniqueness? I mean, we can be brothers, but we can't lose our uniqueness.
Oh
And
my gosh, this gets me excited to interrupt to say
please.
one of my favorite perspectives on what God is, or who as a personality. And it comes through, I believe it's Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind, and Dr. Reverend Michael Beckwith has brought it into popularity of you, me, we each are unique experiences of God living through us.
Of
So
course.
we literally, through our uniqueness and intrinsic value, have that freedom that I love. Brother Don, you use the word religious freedom, and that's really where it's at in this reframing of the word religion as personal experience. So how are you allowing that supreme to evolve
Mm-hmm.
through you? So beautiful. And this may root back to, how do we make room for the light? And just to give you a little 4-point bullet, I know I kind of went on a tangent, yet it's pretty simple. Relax, release tension, relax, accept. So, no judgment, accept, and without interfering of another's personal progress. And then number 4, that radical self and other honesty. Relax, accept, no interference, and honesty. Mic drop
Nice.
again.
Thank you, thank you. Well, thanks for sharing all of that, April Helen. I mean, and then anybody that wants to contact April Helen, we're gonna put all the information that you can contact. Anything that you want to do. I mean, you want to share, because this is beyond just this podcast and this sharing. This is creating a community. And if anyone hearing this is, feels moved and is interested and wants to know more, that's where we're at, and this is what we're here for. All right. Ian, anything from the tutor?
Yes, there was a couple. I asked it a couple questions, but I ended up settling on the last one, which was somebody brought up true religion, and so I asked it to define true religion, and I think it's pretty good. True religion is a living experience of a personal relationship with the divine. It transcends mere belief systems, rituals, or institutional affiliations, and is rooted in the sincere inner realization of spiritual truths. True religion is not confined to dogma or tradition. Rather, it is a dynamic and evolving process of aligning oneself with the eternal values of truth, beauty, and goodness. Those keep coming up, don't they? It is a deeply personal and transformative journey that inspires individuals to seek the divine presence within themselves and to express this connection through love, service, and moral integrity. At its core, true religion is the wholehearted dedication of the human will to the divine will. It is the recognition of one's identity as a child of the divine and the acceptance of the responsibilities and joys that come with this spiritual heritage. This realization fosters a profound sense of purpose and belonging, as well as commitment to live in harmony with the principles of the universe. True religion is not about fear or obligation, but about love and trust, a faith that grows stronger through experience and reflection. True religion also unites individuals with one another, for it recognizes the shared spiritual origin and destiny of all people. It transcends cultural, social, and ideological boundaries, emphasizing the universal brotherhood and sisterhood of humankind. This universal perspective inspires acts of compassion, justice, and service as individuals seek to reflect divine love in their relationship and communities.
Wow.
Hang on. Importantly, true religion is not static. It is a living and growing reality. As individuals deepen their understanding of spiritual truths and expand their capacity for love and service, their experience of religion evolves. This growth is guided by the inner presence of the divine, which continually calls them to higher levels of awareness and action.
Nice.
So, yeah,
Nice.
it's good at that.
Thanks.
It's good
Wow.
at boiling 2,000 pages down into,
Ah.
a few paragraphs.
Good.
That does such a good job. I mean, that distilled the compendiums that I used to make, the studies I called them, of something like a phrase from the Urantia book that goes right to that. It's several pages long of all the quotes out of the Urantia book that feature that phrase. But the UB tutor takes it just right into another realm where it distills and synthesizes all of that information into something really coherent. Thanks, Ian. That was cool.
Yeah, the tool is amazing for doing that work. And what I love about it is you can take what I just read and say, now sum it up in 3 paragraphs for a 13-year-old, and it will do it instantly. It's amazing for that. It's really good at that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's really good at, I mean, a lot of things, but how can you phrase what you just said, all those paragraphs into a simple, sentence for a child. So, well, thanks everybody. I mean, this has been great. I wish we could spend, a little bit longer, but we're different time zones and it's been long days. But the good thing about this is that this is just the beginning. This is, the first programs that we're going to have, and our service to all of you listening, watching, is really to be here and sharing our truths, or the truths that we've found in the universe, in this search for the divine within. And truths are truths, they're not ours, they're God's, they're part of the universe. We just share them with you. If there's anything that really caught your attention and you want to learn more, that's why we have all these tools that you can find. We have this community, and you can knock on our doors and be sure that we will answer. All right. And I want to thank all of you guys. It was really, really pleasant conversation. I want to thank Ian, our Ghost in the Machine operator. I want to thank Brother James, my hippie brother from California. We have a lot of endeavors that we have to do over there. Thanks a lot for sharing all your stories, Don. We really, really thank you for being here. And you're such a wonderful person, such a loving heart. Your message really, really resounds. And Sister April Helen, what can I say? My sister, my southern sister. I've always had a lot of, I spent a lot of times, a lot of summers in Texas, so I have a southern heart, at heart. Maybe my accent don't say it that much, but I do have a heart for the South. So I really have a heart for people like you, April, and you, that wisdom that you guys always have. It's a very it's very, very simple and very human wisdom that you Southerners have, and I really, really enjoy it when you share it. So, thanks for being here, guys, and thanks for sharing and watching our program, our podcast. This is all for you, and remember, this is the divine within, the invisible connection to God. I'm Santiago Kneeland, and saying goodbye, saying carpe diem as well. Take care.